newsroom. This is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Nathan Ruiz, OSU basketball beat writer. And Nathan, OSU broke the streak of those weekend road wins. We'll talk about that in a second and what that's done to any NCAA tournament hopes the Cowboys might have had. But first and foremost on their minds is Texas Tech coming to town for a Wednesday night game, 6 o'clock start, and maybe a slight sliver of hope in that Keenan Evans is day-to-day?
Yeah, dealing with the toe injury, Texas Tech's point guard entered as the #2 scorer in the Big 12 right behind OU's Trae Young. So there's an opportunity here for OSU. He didn't play any of the second half against Baylor, and Baylor is able to keep in that game and ended up winning it at home. So now the opportunity is there for OSU. Even with Evans, they played Texas Tech well in Lubbock. So OSU's a team that's fighting for its NCAA tournament hopes, likely needs to win 4 games in a row, either to end the season or in Kansas City in the Big 12 tournament. So there is an NCAA tournament opportunity there. It starts Wednesday, getting a win there. With Evans out, definitely puts OSU in a more favorable position than they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, and he isn't completely and totally been deemed
Yeah,
out.
day-to-day.
But there's a big game for Texas Tech coming up against Kansas this weekend that makes you think they might rest him on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it definitely sets up that way. If with Kansas in the Big 12 situation with Texas Tech right now being a half game behind KU in the Big 12, you would think that maybe, hey, we'll save Evans, make sure he's healthy when we play KU.
You mentioned the fact that OSU played Texas Tech really well in Lubbock, a tough place to win, had them down at halftime, then weren't able to close the deal in the second half. But without Evans, how does that change the scenario and what the Red Raiders are going to be able to do?
Well, I mean, it's taken guys who are normally off ball and putting them on ball. It just changes your situation. If any team loses its point guard, that obviously affects the way it's going to function. Like I mentioned before, #2 scorer in the Big 12. We saw that they just weren't as effective once he came off the court against Baylor. They weren't able to get many shots. I think they were like 3 for 14 from 3. So it just affects all the different ways they're able to create. We see like OSU this season without Jawan Evans, you lose a player of that caliber, all of a sudden you're just a different offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned before the fact that now OSU, after that TCU loss, it's really a win 4 in a row scenario. This seems like a prime opportunity. Home game, 6 o'clock start. Crowd may not be great, especially with the way this team has struggled, but yet this is an opportunity. What does OSU have to do in your mind to not just play Texas Tech close, but win this game?
Yeah, focus, maturity, consistency, those are kind of the magic words that have been thrown around, all those intangible words that we keep hearing from Mike Boynton and various players. Cam McGriff said it was maybe a maturity issue just because they have so many sophomores who are playing big minutes now. So many guys, as Mike Boynton put it, who haven't had to lead a team before. So it just puts them in a tough situation. At the same time, we saw for the past game and a half, the second half against Kansas State, and then TCU puts up 90 points. The defense hasn't really been there. It's been a struggle for them defensively. A lot of foul trouble from their big men against TCU, and a lot of that had to do as well with the big men making mistakes, but also guys getting past the guards not defending as well as they maybe needed to, and allowing guys to get into the paint and putting their bigs in foul trouble.
Obviously, a lot of attention on getting wins, trying to really bolster any postseason chances this team has. But a sort of subplot to this game on Wednesday night is the fact that Sean Sutton's coming back, and obviously his older brother on the staff at Oklahoma State. It's an interesting story that might get a little bit covered up by just how big this game is for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, you know, it's not like they're coaching against each other like they did back in 2007 when it was Oral Roberts versus OSU. But Sean Sutton, of course, son of Eddie Sutton, former OSU head coach, longtime OSU assistant, now the advisor to Texas Tech coach Chris Beard. So he'll be back. I know they were up late watching film last night on OSU trying to understand what they're matching up against. So I talked to Scott Sutton yesterday, and he said, you know, I hope he's well received. I hope there's a big reception for him. I hope he gets applause. He said, you know, besides my dad, I don't know that anyone else was more impactful to the glory years of OSU of the 90s and early 2000s. So it should be interesting. I'm sure they'll have a moment for him. Larry Reese will announce him, and there will be a nice moment for Sean Sutton. But it'll be interesting to see how emotional he is. It's his first time coaching against OSU in these situations. I don't know how much in-game coaching he really does, but it'll definitely be an interesting situation, an emotional situation for him, I'm sure.
All right, 6 o'clock tip at 6 o'clock tip on Wednesday night. ESPNU if you're watching it at home, 6 o'clock at Gallagher Abbey if you're headed that way. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.